My name is Jeff Kima. I'm the director of the AMICAL Consortium. We're joined today by Jay Schafer and Marilyn Billings of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst Libraries, and they're going to be talking to us about seeking alternatives to high-cost textbooks, a case study of the UMass Amherst Open Education Initiative. And I wanted to just say a few words to motivate the topic a bit, which is not hard because it's impossible to read the higher education press recently without coming almost immediately across some reference to the cost of higher education, and in particular the direct cost to students. And textbooks have traditionally been a small but significant part of that cost, so it's easy to see why alternatives to high-cost textbooks would be of interest to faculty, to students and administrators. But I think this topic is of great potential importance to libraries and librarians as well, in light of where academic libraries are headed. It's my own view that the value that academic libraries offer to their institutions and to the communities that they serve is increasingly going to be tied to what they can do in two areas in particular. One is supporting the effective and critical use of information by their communities, and another is curating and exposing the creative output, and especially scholarly and educational materials that are produced by their communities. And ideally, this involves both open access scholarship and open educational resources. Now, if you do a Google search for open educational resources and libraries, the first hit that you get is UMass Libraries OER page. And there are many higher ed institutions that have been actively contributing to the OER movement. But I think that UMass Amherst has been one of the pioneers in thinking about the library's role in this and demonstrating what libraries are able to do as a critical hub in an area of activity that brings together groups that AMICAL is very concerned with: faculty, librarians, academic support staff, IT departments, administration, and possibly others. Jay Schafer is the director of libraries at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst since 2004. Jay has expertise in library collection building, resource sharing, and facilities space planning, but he's also dedicated to providing innovative, high-quality service to library users. And it's worth noting that UMass is a large research university with about, if I'm not mistaken, about 25,000 FTEs. But their Learning Commons, which was created in 2005 and expanded in 2010, is a testament to Jay's concern with evolving library spaces and services to better meet the needs of students in particular. Marilyn Billings is the Scholarly Communication and Special Initiative Librarian at UMass since 2006. She provides campus and regional leadership and education in alternative scholarly communication strategies, and she oversees the UMass Digital Repository, ScholarWorks, and is the leader of UMass Amherst's Open Education Initiative, which they're going to be talking about today. So Jay and Marilyn are going to tell us how we can ditch our textbooks for something that may be more flexible, more timely, more engaging, and hopefully more affordable. So over to you, Jay and Marilyn.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for the kind words. And thank you, Dimitri, also for your technical help. We appreciate that. Yes, seeking alternatives to high-cost textbooks. This is an ongoing saga at UMass Amherst Libraries, and we're very glad to be able to share some of our experiences with you. First, a little background about how we got into the open environment, especially in open education resources. And this goes back to the national political climate that Jeff was mentioning. There is increased attention in the United States and around the world about the high cost of higher education. This includes both private higher education, which is a significant influence in the United States, especially in Massachusetts, and public higher education. The UMass system is the higher education deliverer in Massachusetts. We have 5 campuses. UMass Amherst is the flagship campus. We also have campuses in Boston, Dartmouth, Lowell, and the medical school in Worcester. And so, as you can tell, we have significant impact and influence in higher education in Massachusetts. On a national basis, there's more and more discussion of student debt. As costs of higher education go up, student loans are increasing in the amount students take away after they graduate from undergraduate school and graduate school. There have been major concerns raised by the President and the Congress about the amount of student debt in the United States and how it is one of the largest portions of our fiscal issues in the United States. A part of the discussion about student debt is tuition. As costs go up, the costs are passed on to students in many ways. And so tuition and fees are one or two of the ways that this cost of education is increasing. But also the cost of auxiliary services is going up. And one of these costs is the cost of textbooks. There has been an ongoing discussion about the high cost of commercial textbooks and the seeming stranglehold that the textbook publishers have on higher education. This comes through, as you know, having very expensive books, books that have many editions so that it's more difficult to keep using the past edition. With new editions, you have to pay for the new edition, and you can't use the old edition as a used book. Students, as you know, have been very innovative in how they can address the textbook issues. They do this through sharing textbooks and through a variety of other areas. But the cost of textbooks is a significant issue with students on any college campus. The political climate on campus is also greatly responsible for our success with the OER initiative. In 2010, FY 2010-2011, as a reaction to the economic downturn, there was a significant decrease in state funding on campus. And so as the state cuts its contribution to education, the campus raises the fees and tuitions that the students pay.
Hi everyone, it looks like we lost Marilyn and Jay momentarily. I'm going to see if we can get them connected. So hold on for just a minute.
Hello? Hello? We're back. Sorry for the hiccup. We seem to have an issue here. Is everything okay on your end? Jeff?
Yeah, I think everything is okay. Everyone else remained connected. I think it was just on your side. So it looks like we're back in business. Go ahead.
Terrific.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so the library obviously is a major area of support for the information resources necessary for students and faculty on campus. And the library has been active over the last 10 years in creating strategic partnerships. We've done this with the Learning Commons and the various partners that we have in the Learning Commons, including the Office of Information Technology, the Writing Center, student advising, and student peer tutoring, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have on campus, I think, a good reputation of being strong partners in trying to advance the use of technology in the 21st century for students and faculty. And Marilyn Billings has been very active in promoting open access initiatives. And I'll let Marilyn talk about that a little bit.
So one of the things that we've been really working on since I took over as the Scholarly Communication Librarian in 2006 is getting our institutional repository up and running, which I believe you heard from Abby Clobridge about that in another webinar or keynote at one of your conferences. And also getting out, talking with the faculty about open access to their scholarship, teaching people about their author rights and those kind of things. And going forward to our faculty senate, along with Jay and a couple of key faculty members, giving presentations about those kind of things, having scholarly communication colloquia on campus, promoting the conversation, basically. So, yes.
And we've tried to do a lot of staff development. We've brought in staff with new skills, skills that deal with metadata, skills in digital images, skills in copyright, skills in intellectual property. And so we're trying to transform the staff as much as we're trying to transform the library to be able to provide the kinds of services that we need to serve the 21st century needs, as I said. And we do this through a variety of means, particularly on the campus. We have been offering educational workshops for faculty and graduate students in particular, trying to educate them about the issues of copyright, the issues of publishers' high charges, and the issues of open access.
So some of the things that we do in that regard, we target particular times of the year, like Open Access Week, for example, work with the graduate school to give some of those workshops for the graduate students, and they partner with us. They provide the pizza for the students for lunch, for example, so that we attract them. And we do that every year, every fall. And then during Open Education Week last year, we did a couple of other events along that same line. So we do try to target those two specific weeks during the year to really push out events.
And this is a library-wide effort. We have events all through those weeks. We bring in speakers to address faculty assemblies, and we also have special seminars with librarians talking to the faculty, particularly the faculty, about institutional repositories, open access, copyright, retaining copyright. And data management is now a big topic on campus too, as we're trying to move into an arena that is new to the libraries, but very much needed on campus. So when we started talking about the Open Education Initiative and open education resources and alternatives to textbooks, Marilyn Billings and I went to the provost and promoted a project that would create the Open Education Initiative through shared funding from the Provost's office and the Director of Libraries. The Provost was very excited about moving forward with this project because it would demonstrate efforts to contain the costs of higher education. As I said, this is a very hot topic on our campus, as all campuses, and the Provost was very interested in having a positive activity going on that would help to contain the cost of higher education for our students. And it also was very important to the Provost that we involve faculty in the conversation, because the faculty are the ones who assign the textbooks, and it is dependent on, success is dependent on the faculty participation in coming up with alternatives. And also the Provost was very excited of being able to talk about saving students money at a time when the university was raising fees. This was a timely endeavor because, as I mentioned, we had just raised fees by about 5% in the year that we started this initiative, and so the Provost and the Chancellor were both very happy to be able to say, yes, we've raised fees, but we're also trying initiatives like the Open Education Initiative that will contain the cost of higher education for our students. And so I'll let Marilyn talk a little bit more about the initiative.
So let's see if this slide works. This is just a review, really, of new ways of thinking about scholarly communications. Let me see if this actually is going to work. Just pushing the thing going forward. Okay, it's working. Good. So if you recall the very beginning of the slide, you saw that pretty much the academic library was dealing with serious crisis. This is back in the 90s. This is just a quick review. The publisher had a lot of control over the means of distributing scholarly communication through our journals, through our monographs, and we saw, as you see through the green line in the academic library box, that our costs were going way up and our budgets were basically staying flat. So we were needing to get rid of some of our content because we couldn't afford it. So then we look to the future and keep looking at how we're evolving our scholarly communication system. We possibly see the role of the publisher diminishing, not going away altogether. And maybe we could envision the role of the library also decreasing. So we could talk about, that's what some of what we'll be talking about during the course of this morning. So, well, for us this morning, for you tonight. So Jay's operating our little mouse here for us. And so what we're looking at is the empowerment of the author through the fact that they keep their copyrights to their materials. They're working more closely with their content. Just, yeah, you can keep. We're looking at the possibility of new business models for scholarly communication endeavors, possibly open access mandates. We're looking at, through open access to content, the users, being all those little people that you see running around, having direct access to the content with the possibility of bypassing the library in the traditional way that the library worked, I'll just say. So hopefully we're at the end of that slide. What we're asterisking now are really the areas that my office and libraries are starting to work on. So with that said then, and remembering the work that you've already engaged in with Abby and some others, that gives you some background quickly of where I kind of sit with this open access initiative. So as Jay was mentioning, we started this back in February, March of 2011. He and I had gone to a Spark meeting where the keynote speakers were talking about open education. And then Spark, the Scholarly Publishing and Resource Coalition, came online with a phone call for library directors, and we're talking about this possible new experiment with open education. So I was on that call. Jay was out of town for some reason. Poor Jay. and so I thought to myself, wow, you know, the person at Temple University, Stephen Bell, who's the past president of the ACRL, was talking about the little initiative they did with alternative textbooks. And I thought, wow, you know, if they can do that, maybe we could do that also. So we put together that conversation with the provost. And in March, the director of libraries and the provost each set aside $5,000, which seems like a lot, but I will just say that at every institution I've been at, whether it's really small or larger, there is a small fund for active faculty engagement in some kind of either research or alternative teaching. And so one can tap into those kind of funds possibly to get this kind of thing started.
And also we have been very active in fundraising with our Friends of the Library. And so we have some funds available for experimenting with alternative kinds of programs, and the Friends are very happy to fund these sorts of initiatives.
So in March, we got this thing started. I couldn't believe it. I mean, things usually go a little bit more slowly in academic higher education, but by April, we had this all set to go. A little scary thinking along my way of thinking how this might work, but simultaneously we're working on putting together that open educational resource live guide that I'll just show you quickly in a second, and you have the URL here on this slide. But we also had to have workshops for folks, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Because I think it's really important to get all the librarians engaged in this conversation, as well as provide a workshop for anyone who might be interested in doing this kind of thing. So the workshops, we had two of them. One was with the librarians, the IT staff on the campus, and with our Center for Teaching and Faculty Development, which are the folks that actually help faculty engage in syllabus development, instructional design, those kind of folks. I had a workshop for them because it was like this was going out the gate, and I really wanted to get buy-in from everyone who could possibly support faculty in this initiative right off the bat. So that was what the really good previous relationships with those partners really contributed to being able to conduct that workshop really quickly. Go over the open educational resources that were available and what the goals were for this particular initiative. Then we, as a group, pulled together a workshop for the faculty who were interested in applying for this initiative. And what we all took about 10 minutes to talk about our respective roles in what we would be doing to support them as we moved forward. We also found that as people were interested in applying, and I'll talk about the faculty program development in just a second, what we found is the faculty were interested that we needed to actually engage in some individual consultation sessions for faculty. So we would have them in my office, and I would pull in some of the IT staff, instructional designers, and other people as were needed for helping the particular faculty member develop their particular proposal. So what we covered at the workshops, you see on your slide, one of the things that I found really especially interesting was the fact that faculty weren't aware even of the databases we had in the library that could point them to freely available resources that were like in the public domain or government databases, things of that nature. So that was really an exciting aha moment for some of the faculty.
Well, faculty also were not very aware of the commercial databases that we provide. And that's, you know, in a hybrid model of open educational resources, if we provide access through course management systems or other reserve sort of mechanisms to the material that we are already licensing, you know, that provides not open access in a true sense, but it provides access to students to information at no extra cost to them.
Right, and yeah, because what we did with our particular open education initiative It was really a three-pronged approach, I would say. One, look for openly available resources that are on our subject guide. Two, to look for those library resources because we subscribe to a number of databases that include ebooks and other things in addition to journal articles, etc. And number three, which has become really interesting to me, is a number of faculty were interested in creating something on their own. A lot of faculty have their notes, they have a lab manual, they have other things that they've developed already for their courses, and they really wanted to create a new thing that was a little more polished than what they had been using in the past and use that as the alternative to the textbook. So that was a fun part. So this is our subject guide on open education resources. Not being sure how this might work, I wanted to just put in a snapshot about it. And you can see the various tabs along the top. And one that is I recommend that you take a look at is for educators. There are lots of particular resources in there that have short snippets, abstracts of what is included in there for texts, whether it be curriculum support materials, textbooks, other things of that nature. I especially point people to the Connections resource that's located over at Rice University in Texas. There's another resource that the University of Minnesota has been putting together with alternative textbooks that is really worth looking at, and because they've been compiling textbooks from around the country, actually. There's OpenStax, and they're all in that particular tab. There are other resources within the for learners that you can also use for courses. If you want additional information about how to advocate for this, we wanted to give you anyone who is interested in using this particular guide to have routes to continue on with those efforts. And if you're interested in more specific details other than what's here in this webinar about our initiative, there's that tab as well. So I encourage you to take a look at that. So the actual faculty proposal, what was that including? When we talked with the faculty at that workshop and also in those individual consult sessions, we didn't want anything to be too large. 2 pages max, really. They were each, if they got the award, were going to get $1,000. So it's not like this is huge money for them, but it's something to reckon with. But we wanted to keep it short and sweet, simple. So the basic course information. So the name of the course, the number of the course, that kind of information so that we can look it up in the course catalog to get any other additional content that we might need. We wanted them to list their current textbooks and the approximate cost of those textbooks, plus the number of students. From that, we were able to gather how much money we would be saving the students, which you'll see in the slide coming up. Then we asked them to do a narrative, 500 words max, about the kind of thing that they're planning to do. We wanted them to identify their alternative sources that they're going to be using, whether they got that from the workshop, from library liaisons, from their IT support staff, or some of the other curriculum support people. Then we wanted them to give just a sentence or two how they were planning to evaluate the course. We wanted to start to do some assessment early on and continue that conversation going forward. And then the final thing we needed to ask them for is when they anticipated starting this. Was it going to be that fall, the following spring, the following year, so that we can put the right resource people in place for them at the right time. So then I realized that faculty really rely on peer review for their scholarly content that goes out in the world, and we hadn't even really given that a thought. So I grabbed some of the folks that are the resource support people and a couple of the faculty who are in our program here at the UMass Amherst campus that is our IT minor program. So a couple of those faculty members volunteered to work with us on evaluating the proposals that came back. So phew, last minute had that covered. So then in April, we did the review of how we wanted to get this call for proposals out. The provost, in giving his support to it, was the one who put the call for proposals out to the faculty. In May, when the deadline came in, this little review team looked at all the proposals. There were several questions, so it was really good that we put that little review process in place. It helped clarify what we needed to have happen for the particular faculty members. Then we talked with Jay, and with the provost, we actually had more awards than what we had the funding for, and so we awarded one extra grant proposal above the 10 that we had decided we could do. And then we also decided to streamline our efforts in awarding the funding, and Jay recommended that the library business manager be the one that disseminated the grants, and that actually proved out to be a really good step to take. So in this slide, you'll see that the particular faculty members, the courses that these faculty members were interested in putting in alternatives to high-cost textbooks, the number of students, and the savings per student based on the estimates that we had. One of the things that I found especially interesting about this was that we covered not only a whole variety of subject areas, but we covered things from the beginning of the undergraduate. The Sociology 2012 is an entry-level class, all the way up through graduate school level, which are the 600s that you see listed here, and just really gamuts from regular schools and colleges to professional schools like management. And what you'll notice, however, is that even though we have one that had 300 students in it, for a lot of them were smaller numbered classes. This is just a look up at the second round. The first round had been so successful that we decided to double fund by this time, and so there are more faculty and more results. So we can keep going for the next one. In this particular round, we hit the jackpot, just to say. The bottom two faculty members were teaching really large general education classes. And so we were able to really see the money hit the road, I guess, in this particular round. And the really exciting end result of these 3 rounds of doing this work is that between the two of Jay and the provost, they had given us $46,000. And at the end of this round, we were able to very proudly say that we had saved students over $750,000. Hand raising, that's good?
The provost really liked that story too.
Yeah.
You know, he was, when you can say you've saved $750,000 for students with a $46,000 investment, that's a very good story to be telling on campus and in the legislature where they fund the university. Now, one of the things we found too is that there are various ways that faculty use this program. Some of them use the open access initiative to replace their primary textbook. Others of them use this initiative to replace supplementary material. So even though, you know, some faculty assign 2 or 3 books that have to be purchased by the students, and so it was, in some cases, they kept their primary textbook but found alternative mechanisms for the supplementary material, which again saved the students a significant amount of money. We also have been working with faculty on streaming video into some of their content management course reserve systems, and students are really loving that too, along with ebooks. So this is not just replacing print material with more print material.
So I mentioned earlier that we had done some like qualitative assessment as we went along. We had asked the faculty members to be willing to participate in focus groups, to have their students be surveyed, and to also be willing to be on a panel that we could have for Open Education Week was a couple years ago, I think, to really start to promote this. And so they willingly did this because they were so excited. So part of the faculty survey results, it was just a small scale of 1 to 5, just finding out if they felt that this was at least as good as, if not better than, their traditional textbook. And so you see the results here, and our sense was that this was really excellent results that we got. Another thing that we did was each course has a student evaluation survey that they do. And so we asked our institutional research office in the senior administration to work with us on this SRTI, student response to instruction form, and do an evaluation to see if the results that the students report at the end of a semester where the open education was taught was it comparable to what the student evaluations were previously, i.e. when the course was taught with a high-cost textbook. So they did that analysis, and the end result was, to me, disappointing, but they thought it was fine. The end result was they could see no statistical difference. And the good news from their perspective, meaning the senior administration doing research, was that that shows you that there's no detrimental effect to using open educational resources versus the high-cost textbook. So they were quite pleased that the results were still basically the same. But the faculty were very excited, and this, one of the faculty members, in fact, well, why don't we go to the next slide, so you could take a look at what some of the faculty actually have said during the course of some of those surveys. The other thing that, while you're reading, I'm going to talk about is I was involved with a faculty forum with our Teaching Commons group, which includes the IT staff and the Center for Teaching and Faculty Development. And we had 2 of our faculty members speak at that about their experience. One of them has been so excited by the results of what her experience has been that she's actually in the process of writing an article. She's one of the faculty members in our College of Education. So that's in the works right now, and I just think that it's really good for the faculty members to get out there in their own subject field, in their own articles and conferences, speaking to this kind of initiative. So,
and one faculty member said that it really freed him from having to use a textbook that had material that he might not have put in his own course, but because it was in the textbook, he felt like he had to use that material. And so by putting together his own teaching materials, it allowed him to teach the course in the way he wanted to teach the course instead of the way the textbook was constructed.
So some of the benefits that we've noted is the convenience. The faculty members really like being able to find these materials fairly easily. They enjoy the slightly different interaction with their library liaison to locate library materials. They're discovering that by using these other materials, they can reuse, remix, do whatever they want, as Jay was just saying, to find other content that they find much more intriguing for students in this day and age. I think the pedagogical implications are really huge. I've listed a few things, but I think there's a lot more research that needs to go into this area. We're just beginning that, so I'm just listing out a few things that we're finding in our conversations with faculty that are really, really pretty exciting. I don't know why that's not moving. There we go. So I can't really talk about this without talking about some potential barriers or challenges, things like that. Some people did say that it was time-consuming to find high-quality open education resources. When you go and look on the subject guide and look for some of those sources, I always stress there are some sites where they will tell you that the content is peer-reviewed, and for others it's just somebody gathering together various pieces of content. So just to be aware and be wary. For some faculty who wanted to create their own thing, obviously it was time consuming to create it. Each faculty member got $1,000, which isn't really a lot, but that's what we had to offer them. And they used it either to pay themselves or to pay a TA, a teaching assistant, who had previously taken the course to create, polish up their existing notes they had. So some students still have a preference for reading offline, reading in print. We have put some of the material that faculty have created into our institutional repository, the kind of concept that Abby was talking about last year for you. And those, we have also offered a print option, so to address those kind of things. So the lack of knowledge by faculty about all of these kind of things is where all of our workshops and educational forums come into play. So we need to step up on that and do a little bit more with that with our partners. So, however, that said, a number of institutions have followed on our example. These are just a few, I'm just going to say, who have taken our model and incorporated it in whole, as in some of the universities of California system, or in part, so such as Purdue. And a number of community colleges have been really interested in this. And in fact, some community colleges in other parts of the country have been way ahead of us. In the lab guide, you'll see there's a reference to a community college list there. And then it's just very exciting to be involved in this seemingly cutting edge thing. So the next steps that we're looking at, where is the permanent home for this kind of initiative? Who are the partners that need to be involved in the middle of it? We're finding from faculty members that they're interested in having help with some of that copy editing and proofing that are needed for their particular works that they want to put out there, and then more efficient ways of marketing and publicizing both this initiative and also the results of the initiative. We'll be continuing to do assessment, as I've mentioned already, through more faculty surveys, focus groups, working with our assessment librarian here in our library and the institution as a whole. So stay tuned maybe for more articles, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So thank you all for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Jay and Marilyn. How do you want to deal with the questions? There's a couple ways we could do this. There are some questions that have come up in the chat, and we've pasted those over into the sort of side chat that I think you can see on the right-hand side. If you want, we can open up the floor and enable people's mics if they want to ask their questions verbally. How would you like to do this?
Questions that already are on the board here. There's one asking about publisher backlash. We haven't really had significant backlash. I don't think we've made, at this point, too much impact on the national publishing arena. We have had discussions with the bookstore, and I guess while they're not particularly pleased with this effort, they understand that the high cost of textbooks is a major issue, and the campus is re-examining the current model of campus bookstore for textbooks, looking for other models. The copyright problems, Marilyn can talk about.
So the copyright problems, and our faculty careful. So a year ago, we were very fortunate to be able to hire our librarian with copyright and information policy expertise. She has been invaluable because she has a JD degree. In the eyes of the faculty, having the imprimatur, if you will, for speaking to copyright, fair use issues, and the use of Creative Commons licenses on the content that the faculty creating themselves. So I will just say that every single faculty member, it's a different conversation so far. We're tracking that. Laura has a spreadsheet in place where she's working through this just to see the types of problems or questions that come up, to see if we can create some sort of a workshop or FAQ that will address the majority of these kind of questions going forward. I think one thing to keep in mind is this is still in pilot phase, meaning that it's not systematized throughout the university. So that gives us a little bit of leeway to still be experimenting with various solutions and various other kinds of things that we might want to look at. So hopefully that addresses that question. If it doesn't, there's our email addresses, and you could get back in touch with us. To address the question about why would students be more engaged and more successful with the OER, what the faculty are telling me is that the students really like having things like interactive media. They know for a fact that the faculty have just selected those particular materials just for them for that course. On my own side, I think that because the faculty member is so much more engaged in what they're doing for the curriculum itself and for their own syllabus, rather than use a traditional textbook, that their own enthusiasm for their subject area comes through so loud and clear to the students that they can't help themselves but almost jump up in their seats, talking with a faculty member much more in partnership. You know, we're hearing another thing in higher ed these days about active learning, team-based learning. This fits perfectly in with those kind of things that our university is also engaged in. So the qualitative difference between them and traditional textbooks, I don't know that I feel like I can really address that. I'd have to get a faculty member here.
Right.
So that might be another a good step to take.
And you have to realize that many of the faculty that we're dealing with are early adopters of technology and are the enthusiastic, the kind of faculty that are most engaged with students to start with. And so, you know, I think it's a tribute to their efforts that they're willing to do this and have such a impact on students and the amount they spend for textbooks.
To answer the question about what was the cost savings per student, if you go back to those 3 slides, you'll see that on those. I didn't point that out. I apologize for that. But the furthest right column on each particular slide is the cost saving per student on that in that particular course. So it's going to vary depending on what the cost of the textbook was for each individual course. One of the things that I might add in that also is that I had one faculty member in engineering who was very interested in doing this. And he said, but Marilyn, I really need to have them buy this building code book because it is the building codes that we have here in the country, and they need to be able to refer to that and use those codes. And it was a $40 book. And so we all decided, actually even before that, that $35 or $40, if the students still needed to pay in that cost range, that would be acceptable to us, to those of us who are running this initiative. So
right. It's not necessarily how much they spend, it's how much they save. So if they still had to spend $40 instead of $140, that's still a significant savings to the student.
Mm-hmm. So let me see, how much work did it require? Wow, that's really hard to say. Because you have these time periods when you have the responses to the proposals coming in, you've got, you know, maybe 10% of your time for a week that you're dealing with faculty members, helping them with various proposal questions or evaluating the proposals, those kind of things. When the faculty are looking for materials, for example, in library databases, the library liaison librarians say to me things like, this is just part of my regular job, and I just feel that it's just what I do. And so they don't feel like that particular part is any sort of an add-on for them.
Right, it's helping faculty understand the resources that we have in the library that we've licensed, and also the resources that faculty have available that are open. And so it is that teaching moment for liaisons working with faculty.
And I think the person who mentioned the publisher taking this issue into consideration, absolutely. I think not only McGraw-Hill, but a couple of others have started altering their models to be more cost-effective in the end and addressing copyright issues. So,
except with McGraw-Hill, we have another one of our deans is very much supportive of the McGraw-Hill learning program, and so in psychology they're starting a pilot project where students do not have an option to purchase the textbook. The textbook is part of their course fee, and the fee is less than the textbook used to cost, but it also limits the ability of students to do innovative things like getting an old edition or finding an edition through Amazon or something. And I think that, well, we haven't yet seen pushback on this model. I personally think that students are going to be upset when they see a fee for a textbook that they have no choice about paying or not paying, and that the model that we are offering obviously requires more work on the faculty's part, but I think provides a much more satisfactory solution for the students.
And going back, the questions are going flying off of the screen so fast that it's hard to keep up with them all. But just quickly with the JCU student, what I would suggest is that you might start up an active student group on your campus. There are resources on the SPARC site, the Scholarly Publishing and Resource Coalition, and the person at SPARC who is in charge of the Open Education initiative right now is Nicole Allen. She's previously been involved with PIRG groups, PIRG, and there are resources there that you can look to and see if you can adopt any of those. And if you want to be back in touch with me personally, I can maybe do a virtual intro to Nicole for you so that you can start working on this. How do you get this going? There we go. Our screen just went blank for a second. So I think the whole point too that Angie mentions about textbooks not being interactive, I think that's exactly what the faculty are finding so intriguing and exciting, is that by actually incorporating some of the more interactive elements that you'll find on some of the other resources, they aren't having to create something necessarily, and they can do something that's more interactive with the students. And with higher education moving into that more active learning engagement type of model, that this fits very nicely there. Just also quickly, I know that you had Tracy Matrano in talking with you all about MOOCs, and I can see where this kind of model that we have, where we have the IT staff, the Center for Teaching and Faculty Development, and librarians all working together in partnership for this new model of education. It's a MOOC-like environment in a smaller setting, and we can actually provide the support locally for the students that we're trying to teach. And I think that's really a lot more powerful than what might have been thought of initially. Faculty integrating into their LMS systems, absolutely. That's some of what's been happening, whether it be Moodle or Blackboard or some other system. One of the things that happened with one of the slightly older faculty members is she had a little bit of trouble with that, and so one of our IT people was able to work with her and get the right kind of link into the LMS so that the students can access the content. So that just, yeah, little
Right.
technical things like that.
Yeah, and again, with the hybrid model, using licensed resources within the LMS through a secure firewall environment provides what we believe is appropriate and fair use of licensed resources for classes at no additional cost to the students. The library is already paying these fees, and we're just providing easy access to library resources through the learning management system.
Jeff, are there questions that we've
With a
missed
question
along?
myself? In
Yes?
fact, I wanted to jump in with a question of my own, if you don't mind. One of the questions that came out, there was a bit of pre-webinar discussion in our online community, actually, among some of the members, having to do with it's really interesting to hear about this kind of project at an institution of your size with the resources that you have and the staff. But most of our institutions are much smaller, of course, and less resourced. And in particular, I think that some of the success of your project may be dependent on how well some of these different units across campus have functioned together to collaborate on this between the library, the Center for Teaching and Learning, faculty, and other academic support structures. For those institutions that where those internal structures are not that well developed, for example, the Center for Learning and Teaching, some of our institutions have a very well developed structure like that, others don't. But for those that are either smaller institutions or where these internal structures are not as well developed, how do we start? What's a good what advice do you have for just getting started, if on a much smaller scale and without the infrastructure there?
So that's one of the reasons that I put the community colleges on the other institutions that have started adopting this model, because they tend to be smaller. And I've also had some liberal arts colleges around the country talk to me about this. So I think it's scalable for any size institution, in fact.
Yeah, I would recommend that the librarians find one or two faculty members that are open to these kinds of ideas and willing to experiment and willing to offer new and challenging ideas to their students, and then try to get one or two faculty members to do this and demonstrate how it can be successful. And then I think that the peer communication and peer pressure within the faculty is one way to make the program grow. But if you have one or two faculty who are your pilot programs, and maybe they're willing to do it without the $1,000, but just the challenge and the reward for the students, as far as the students not having to buy textbooks.
And I think the librarian at the various campuses could start having a conversation with somebody in the IT group at each college. Just start having conversations about higher education, the topics that are happening. Have monthly meetings even. You might try that kind of communication dialogue initially. We have that here, and we've been doing that since the early 2000s, I would say. Obviously a little persistence helps.
Or in Marilyn's case, a lot of persistence. But
so you have, I think, getting your own understanding in place and the kinds of things that you would need to do. I think having this kind of discussion is very helpful in that regard, and let it percolate in your own mind. And like Jay said, get a couple of faculty members who are interested in doing new and exciting things. And if you don't know of anyone at your particular campus, you just, do the old sneaker netting, around the campus, walk around, see who might be interested, intrigued in this kind of things. these kind of initiatives.
Yes. And I think the question is, yes, this would make a greater connection between liaison librarians and faculty. And I think this is one of the strengths that we found, is that many of these faculty have not used the liaison librarians as the valuable resource they are until they come into this kind of environment where they understand the expertise of the librarian and the librarian's knowledge of the resources that are available both in the library and open resources.
And I've noticed that a couple of your institutions may have subject guides like what we have, and you can adopt ours and just take it over for your own use. That's perfectly fine. Just I think what happens is you have to send me a note and ask if you can borrow it or some such thing. But feel free. You know, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Also, we have basically templates of the call for papers that goes out from the provost. We have templates of the email that I send to the faculty when they get their award. And so in addition to copying myself on that, I copy in the library liaison, the IT staff that might be helpful to the faculty member, and anybody doing instructional design, having gotten those on board as partners in advance, as I have mentioned. And so the faculty member, when they receive that, congratulations, you just received this award, have in the CC line of the email a number of people who will support them in that initiative. And I have some other documents too if people are interested in that, and they can just adopt those for their own use.
Great.
We're going to have to start wrapping this up, but I wanted to close with a question about the sustainability of this kind of project, because given the fact that there's the financial motivation that's you know, pushing it along, at least in the pilot phase, what kind of a future do you think this kind of project has that doesn't involve the supplementary monetary compensation? Are there other ways that you could suggest briefly that to sort of take the place of the monetary incentive?
Well, I think once faculty learn that they can save their students enormous amounts of money, when you're talking about 300 students in a class, you know, and $100 per student, that adds up very quickly, and from semester to semester. Also, I think that some faculty will do this just because they believe it's the right thing to do for students. I assume that we will continue the incentive program, and it's not a lot of money for us or our faculty, and it does create some sort of incentive structure, and faculty do work on incentives.
More than not. But I will also add that I've been having conversations recently with a person in the provost's office who's in charge of undergraduate education, and they're very interested in team-based learning, active learning, and I think the sustainability of this effort could be incorporated into that as one of the recommendations for faculty who teach in using those two methodologies, so that it would be one of the expectations, if you will, that possibly the faculty members would be teaching or at least examining this kind of curriculum instead of using a high-cost textbook. So
great,
that's
thank you. Thank you. There have been a lot of great questions coming up, a lot of great discussion, and I hope that people will be interested in continuing this discussion afterwards, after the webinar. We have a space to do that. I'm going to put a couple links into the chat for AMICAL Connect. There's the main forum where anyone can post a discussion topic. Then there's also a group set up on free and open access materials, and the way that works is anyone that's in that group, and anyone can join in AMICAL, anyone that's in the group actually gets an email notification when there's new activity in the group. So feel free to continue the discussion there. And I want to say just a huge thanks to Jay and Marilyn for the webinar. Thanks to Demetrius for keeping things running in the back and managing all the questions. And thank you to all the attendees for showing up. We had a great turnout today, and it was wonderful to have the interaction and the questions coming. A quick
interest in this.
Just to let everyone know too that the next webinar in this series that we've started is going to be March 13th, and it's going to be on tools and methods for understanding our library communities. We're going to be joined by Roger Schoenfeld and Nancy Foster of Ithaca, and Roger's going to talk about Ithaca's faculty and student surveys of library expectations. Yeah, great. And how we could adapt these Ithaca studies for AMICAL institutions. And Nancy's going to talk about another side of that, her ethnographic methods that a lot of our institutions are already familiar with for studying library communities and how these methods can complement each other. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a blast.
Great. Thank you.